He's 28, married, father of one, another on the way. He's been unemployed for 2 years, over 100 applications, 30 interviews, and nothing. He looks at me, not angry, just tired, and says, "You know, Jeremy, it's possible to do everything right and still fail." And I don't correct him, because I know deep down in my soul that he's right, and so do you. How can I speak of a God who cares for creation, as I have done again and again on this channel, a God who sides with us when the evidence seems so horribly against it? Every war, every mutilated child, every natural disaster, every broken dream, every wart and pimple seems an indictment of this God. Could there be a harder question than this? Welcome back to a very unusual Beyond the Black Box. Biblical Christianity claims that God made a good world prepared with all that was necessary for a rich and glorious journey into ever-deepening beauty and holiness, complete with majestic caretakers who were made in God's own image and equipped for godlike work. Yet you peruse your news feed or simply sit with the struggles of your own heart for 5 minutes, and you grow steadily angry. You feel deceived, like Gandalf the Grey, extolling the virtues of having an adventure while neglecting to mention that the world is really made up of orcs and wraiths. There's just no sustaining the fiction that this world, as we're forced to live in it, looks anything like the good world that came from God's hand. Oh yeah, there's still beauty enough. Even Sam Ganji gets to see his olive haunts. But it's also slopping over with disease, despair, and death. Must we close our eyes to the world's real state to be good Christians or to believe in a good God? Well, I hope not. Because if that's what's demanded, everyone with working eyes is doomed. But nowhere do the scriptures hide from these truths. Rather, they are embraced and explained. The Christian story isn't only that of a good world, but of a good world spoiled, wrecked, undermined, and so thoroughly marred that the glory of God is now obscured, still present, but increasingly hard to see, like trying to catch a clear reflection in a cracked and muddied mirror. Now, the story of how this world became so fractured explains why life is so hard. But be warned, the answer is neither easy to say nor easy to hear, for it implicates even the best of God's creatures. Now, I do not tell it to drown us in misery. Life in a broken world does that without my help. I tell it because without knowing it, we will never understand God's response. Cling to that. To get to the dawn, you must first walk through the night. But I will tell you the grim conclusion of this dark march in advance. We are a broken and hopeless race, abiding in a death from which we cannot raise ourselves. If anything is to be done for us, God must do it. Yeah, I know, Bixby. It's heavy, but it's the story. How can we not tell it as we received it? Honestly, there's no point in doing otherwise. So let's get down to it. Christianity's answer to the problem of evil begins here. When we look around and we see poverty, famine, war, drought, disease, abuse, abandonment, sorrow, and despair, we are not seeing the world as it was meant to be. We are seeing a world come undone, pulled apart at the seams, full of unreached potential and failed dreams. And our first question, naturally, is what could possibly cause such a disillusion of the good world God made? Well, there's a short list of candidates. God? Well, God certainly has the raw power, but as I have argued repeatedly on this channel, that answer will never do. No accusation against the goodness of God can ultimately stand in the face of even the muted goodness and glory still evident in the world. And I've quoted Psalm 8 in support, that part of creation's function is to silence the foe and the enemy. And that psalm, remember, was written while looking at the same broken world we see. Well, an angel then. Christianity does assert that there are angelic powers at work in the world, some of them diabolical, enemies of God and God's works, and such a power might persecute, oppress, or even occupy God's creation, but always as an invader and a usurper. Creation's despoiling has rather all the appearance of an inside job, that its undoing was not done by some distant, foreign, conquering power, but from within, by something closer to home. Oh yeah, it bears the marks of infernal occupation, but we'll come to that in a moment. Well, what about the beasts of the earth? No, they're incapable. There's very little the dog or the dogwood could do to fracture creation. They don't even have wills to modify their own nature. Well, who then? What creature has within itself the power to effect such devastation of God's good and holy world? Oh yeah. There's one. The royal emissary, the world's resident regent. If the one to whom all creation was entrusted rebelled against the rightful king, what would be the result? As goes the king, so goes the kingdom. Here we find the source of all the sorrows of the world, or as Pogo once put it, we have met the enemy, and it's us. Now, the story of the snake and the apple is well known. I'll climb inside it in detail another time. For now, I'll give only the barest details for context. In Genesis chapters 1 to 3, we watch God make Adam and Eve for great glory and fulfillment, bless them with great potential, and then invite them into the divine agenda for the world. And yet, in the face of such promise, they're tempted by the serpent and they rebel, doing what God had forbidden for their own benefit. And the consequences are dire. Laborious toil, great pain in childbirth, marital travail, sweat, tears, and finally, miserable death. It's not a happy picture. And Adam and Eve gain nothing worth having from their absurd choice to rebel. Neither do any of their children, who seem bent on repeating their parents' choice at every turn. 6 chapters into the Bible, we find God repenting of ever having made humans because every thought of their hearts was evil. Thus comes the great purging flood. But this story continues to our own day. You know its consequences in your own life. You've been a victim of Adam-like behavior. And if you're willing to admit it, you've also at times been the Adam-like perpetrator of evil against others. And so have I. And again, I am not telling you this to make you feel guilty or sad. I'm not trying to make you feel anything at all. I'm telling you this because it is true and it explains much that needs explaining. The fall is the Christian explanation for all the deficiencies in the world. And I mean that as broadly as it sounds. Wherever you point your finger at the chaos of individual lives, unrest between nations, or the unruliness of the natural world, it ultimately flows out of that initial choice to rebel against God. Or to put it bluntly, because I don't want you to miss this, every sorrow you've ever witnessed, endured, perpetrated, or even heard about is connected to the original and ongoing rebellion of Earth's human caretakers against their Maker. Now that is a staggering claim. It seems incredible in the actual meaning of that word. But is it? Well, that depends. When we're all done, you ask yourself whether I've accounted for all the facts. If facts remain that I can't explain, then either Christianity or my explanation of it is deficient. But if the details fit, if they match your experience, then I submit you have good warrant for accepting the Christian explanation. Yeah, we may all still be wrong together, but we're not fools for having believed it. Something happened beneath that tree that turned a harmonious world into an ungovernable one, a corner turned, steps taken which neither we nor the world could retrace. If you leap off a high cliff, yeah, you may regret it. You may even desire to change, yet you will continue to fall. Some choices you cannot return from. The baby is born, the relationship ruined, the plea deal entered, the violation perpetrated. So long as you stood on the brink, you still had some control. But with the leap, you have handed your mastery off to someone else. What Christianity says happened when Adam and Eve took the serpent's word over God's is something we've all experienced. Just as our own choices eliminate possible futures, when our race rebelled, humanity and the world ceased to be one thing and became irrevocably something else. The fallout of that treachery touched everything. Adam and Eve's bodies and souls, their relationship, their progeny, and the world they were set to govern. Now, for the remainder of this episode, I will focus on what human rebellion did to the natural world. In a future episode, I'll take up what it did to us, our bodies, souls, and relationships. Again, the argument is that the fall is the source of all that's predatory and disastrous in nature. But how could anything Adam and Eve did affect the whole world? Now, maybe in an age of nuclear weapons and global warming, that's less hard to imagine, but it's still a fair question. Why should the butterflies and the butternut squash care at all what Adam and Eve did? Well, the explanation rests on Adam and Eve's position as caretakers of creation. Since the world's harmony and beauty was, in some very real sense, centered in their royal position, their rebellion rippled outward like a pebble thrown into a pond. The world was made to follow their lead. Had they glorified their Maker, creation would have responded to their just governance with ever greater beauty and holiness. But when they went to war against God, creation couldn't help but follow. If America's leaders declare war on, Canada, I might disagree as a citizen, but I'd still be at a state of war with Canada. And as a Michigan resident, consequently, I'd be living in perpetual fear of red-jacketed Mounties at my front door. Well, maybe not. But like the outcome or not, this is simply what it means to have a representative, a king, a president, a senator, even a CPA who files your taxes on your behalf. If Adam and Eve represented Earth in God's holy council, their choices stand. As goes the king, so goes the kingdom. Now, St. Paul makes this very clear in Romans chapter 8, that creation itself was betrayed by human rebellion. Listen. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revelation of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to fertility not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, but in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. Wow. 3 implications follow from this. 3 losses. First, lost desire. This one we feel, and most obvious. It is most poignantly seen in our own time. As a race, we've abandoned our obligation to steward creation well. Our mandate was to rule with justice, but it has devolved into a desire to serve our own ends. We strip mine the mountains, clear-cut the forests, and cast the waste into the rivers and valleys. We who were entrusted with the world's care have become like the parent who beats the child bloody with the rod of its own authority. Or like a tyrant who taxes his people to starvation and wonders why they won't work harder. The history of human interaction with creation is an alternating story of abuse and neglect. Adam could hardly have known when the ground was cursed because of him that he and his children would become the ongoing agents of that very curse. Paul accuses his own race. Creation groans in a prison of human mismanagement. But the second, lost ability. The second implication is that we lost authority, as expressed in the growing thorns and thistles. We have not only lost our desire to rule and govern, but we have lost our ability to do so. The ground of Genesis 3 now actively resists us, and the physical world in turn has rebelled against us for our unjust governance. John Calvin wrote starkly about this in his commentary on Genesis. Listen. We see indeed that wild beasts rush violently upon men and rend and tear them in pieces. And if God did not wonderfully restrain their fierceness, the human race would be utterly destroyed. Savage beasts indeed prevail and rage against men in various ways, and no wonder, for since we perversely exalt ourselves against God, why should not the beasts rise up against us? Nevertheless, the providence of God is a secret bridle to restrain their violence. And then later, it is especially necessary that the waters should be restrained by this word of God, as by 1,000 bolts and bars, lest they should break forth and destroy us. Do you hear the implication? But for God's restraining and merciful hand, creation itself would rise up in the name of justice and cast us out. Finally, a third implication: a lost throne. When we abandoned the throne of creation, that throne did not stay empty for long. We are obliquely told all throughout the scriptures that a diabolical usurper sat down upon it. The tempter of the garden is now called the prince of the power of the air. Now, I want to be clear. This upstart has not usurped God's throne. That's not possible. But rather, ours. In some real, though mysterious sense, Satan now rules from the throne God prepared for us. We pass our lives in any enemy-occupied country, like Nazi-controlled France or modern Crimea or Tibet. We've abdicated our throne and become subjects of a diabolical power in common rebellion against our common maker. Now, if we are to appreciate God's response to all this sorrow, and make no mistake, God has one, we must own this first. We can't be like the proverbial husband who, though thoroughly lost, snaps at his wife, "Stop nagging, dear, I know exactly where I am." If we cannot admit we're lost, how shall we ever be found? Before the alcoholic can recover, he must own his addiction. Yeah, this is the dark part of the story, and I'm sorry to say the next episode will be darker still, because we still haven't explained the whole of the human plight. But Christianity says this is our situation if God does nothing. And left to our own devices, it is a dire situation indeed. But did you hear what I said? If God does nothing. Have hope. The fall isn't the end of the human story, it's only the second chapter. The rest of the story consists of God's response. God will not allow the diabolical throne to stand. God's will still be done. There is a man coming to this story who will restore the sons and daughters of Adam to their throne by sitting down in it himself. Hey there. I claimed in this video that the fall explains every sorrow you've ever witnessed, endured, or heard about, and that if the details of the story fit your own experience, then you have warrant for believing it, even if you can't prove it outright. So here's my question. Where does this account actually match where you've lived? And where does it strain? Tell me in the comments. And if this kind of thing is useful to you, thinking clearly about hard questions without pretending they're easy, consider subscribing. There's more of this coming, and I'd like you to be there for it. Catch you next time.